Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Fran. In this channel, I make educational videos on healing trauma and everything about mental health. Today, I want to talk about how I healed from fear of abandonment. For people who have been watching my videos, you will know that I've suffered years from abandonment anxiety to a point that I constantly have panic attacks when someone doesn't respond to my texts or phone calls, and I struggle to maintain a healthy relationship, any sort of healthy relationship, because I would see any sign of distancing or perceived distancing as that they are leaving me, and leading to my conclusion that, oh, everybody leaves in the end and nobody's trying to stay in my life. After years of therapy and after years of trying out different methods, I finally got it into a normal range of fear of abandonment. So when I talk about fear of abandonment, I have stressed that everybody has fear of abandonment because human beings were wired to survive in groups, in communities, in tribes, right? So it's wired in our gene. We are scared to be left alone. But for people who don't have this abandonment anxiety, they are able to view things in a more objective way, even though they have been triggered, but they are able to calm down and assess the situation, if it's threatening or not, so they would make rational choices instead of compulsive ones. But how did I know that I was suffering from this abandonment trauma? Was that it was like out of proportion. For example, somebody, maybe they're busy, like they forgot to send me a good night text, and I would panic. I would lose sleep over it. There are like 1,000 possibilities, like all of them are disastrous, running in my head non-stoppably, to a point that I just cannot shut it down. There's always kind of this out of proportion anger and resentment towards this person when they don't meet my needs, the needs that I want them to instantly reply me, reassure me that they won't leave me. When I adopted this victim role, like that I'm being abandoned by them, I would have more anger and more resentment towards them. I would throw a temper tantrum, I would yell at them, I would refuse to talk to them, to a point that it doesn't really make sense to myself, because I know I usually don't act in this like childish way, right? But I just couldn't control it. I felt this hurt inside of me. I feel extremely alone and desperate when I tried to talk sense to them that, well, you're hurting me, but it exhausts them. It actually pushes them away. And I would start to blame myself again for being so needy. Sometimes I apologize for being so vulnerable and so emotional. But the more I do this, it just gets worse, because it's like I'm begging them to not leave me, to not see me as a burden. And I was just a mess in relationships. The change starts to come when I realized that this is an issue, this is a problem. Like I had my contribution to this kind of messy relationships. So I took the advice from my therapist that I wanted to focus on myself first. I wanted to really dive into the patterns that I had, dive into the origins of this unhelpful pattern of my responses, took responsibility for myself, for my healing. And when I become more recovered, when I start to detach from this irrational fear, this irrational anxiety, then I think I would be more prepared to get into relationships that's more nourishing and healthy. So I did try multiple methods to heal myself, because I'm this person who just rushed to things. Even in healing, I made the mistake of rushing. Like I would try 100 different methods and see which one works for me. And that is a disadvantage of mine, because sometimes I exhaust myself in healing, but it has its advantages because I explored multiple ways and I explored what really worked for me and what didn't. And that allowed me to be here to share my experience with you, so that you can assess like which method you wanted to take in your healing, and what proportion and what weight you wanted to devote into each method. So I think the most helpful one, of course, was therapy. Mine was psychoanalysis. So I worked with my therapist for now it's like 4-ish years in diving into the history of my family. So my mom, she was extremely depressed because she has a very low self-worth. She completely depended on my dad, who is far from reliable. He was an addict. He was like fucking around, and he was extremely irresponsible. He never come home. So my mom, because she was depressed, and she completely devoted to her career to be better so that she could win the love of my father. And she left me when I was 2 years old, like far from 2 years old. I think I was 1-ish only, and she left me to pursue a degree, an MBA. And I wasn't reunited with her until I was 3, and she got cancer from then, and she passed away when I was 7. And I was forced to live with my dad, but my dad was just fucking around outside, and he would abuse me, like emotionally. He would shame me, he would reject me of all my needs, and he left me with my neighbors mostly. My uncle, who was my mother's brother, because he loved my mom so dearly, he wanted to take my custody. And you know what got my dad to agree to this deal was that my uncle gave him a car, and that's why he gave up my custody. He was like, go ahead, like you can have her, like I don't want her anyways. I grew up in a family with my uncle and auntie, but in this family it was not stable at all because they had a golden child who's my cousin. She does everything perfectly. I was always like constantly being compared to her, like you're so terrible at everything, like you're selfish like your dad, you have all those bad qualities from your dad. And my uncle is extremely explosive. He was extremely emotional. When he was upset, he would throw like glasses and he used cups and all those things in the house. I was scared to shit, like I had no identity of myself, even though looking from the outside, like I was lucky enough to be adopted to this family. You probably had no idea what it felt like to live under someone else's roof. It's like you cannot say anything that's against them, that any opinion that's different from them, because you had this overwhelming fear of being abandoned, because you already don't have your dad and you don't have your mom, so who's gonna have your back? I got nobody. So there's no wonder I would have this detrimental level of fear and anxiety of being abandoned. And when I and my therapist explored until this level, we understood that, well, it was because of the background you grew up in. It was because of those unfortunate events that made you believe, that made you adopt this core belief that people will hurt you, they will exploit you, and then they will leave you, and every relationship doesn't last. And I realized there are many core beliefs, like detrimental ones, I adopted during the way. Like I've shared in my other workbook videos, under my conscious awareness, those core beliefs push me to desperately grab onto every kind of relationship, because I was terrified that every relationship is gonna turn out the way that I used to experience. So I would have this irrational, compulsive behavior to white knuckle things, to be in control of everything, to be in control of other people even. That is when I started to work on the core belief side using CBT methods. And I worked on every one of those reflective questions with my therapist. She really helped me modify those automatic reactions I have towards those core beliefs. She really helped me see like how everything can be entirely different from my assumptions that things will go wrong. She really helped me brought light to see there are so many alternatives to one behavior. Like they're not doing this to you. Maybe they're busy, maybe they're having a bad day, maybe they're just having other things on their mind that's not relevant to you. And that really gave me space to see things, to step back before I act compulsively towards one decision. So there was one very obvious one. There was one time the boy, like, he wasn't responding to me. So we're in the middle of the text. We're talking about like where we're gonna meet up tomorrow. So we're in the middle, and I asked him to meet me here, somewhere here, and he just stopped responding. And I have those thoughts like, whoa, should I not pick this place? Did this place show my bad taste? Does it mean like he doesn't want to go this far to meet me? Oh my god, like, I'm really being in trouble to him. He's not gonna want to see me tomorrow. And I have those disastrous thoughts on my mind. And for the 3 hours, I was at work, and I realized that I couldn't focus anymore. Like, I was extremely unsettling, and I was like, my hands were like shaking to a point. And I booked a session with my therapist instantly, and we talked for like an hour. And she was really helping me see, well, I have those automatic thoughts jumping out towards this ambiguous situation, right? I had this impulse to translate it, to interpret it as a bad one. But 5 minutes later, the guy responded. He was like, sorry, I was caught in the meeting. So that was a really memorable experience for me. Whenever I had a further ambiguous situation, I would remember this one. How I instantly jumped to negative conclusions, someone's gonna leave me. How I instantly got myself really anxious, like I have those bodily sensations, I have all those lingering thoughts on my mind, and I was like compulsive. I didn't act on this compulsive urge, but I was having those compulsive urges to instantly text him to, maybe we can go somewhere else, maybe we can pick a place that you want. So to do those things. But it really showed me the alternative explanation to one possible situation, and that was a reminder for me to not jump into conclusion. I also wanted to introduce something that gets us stuck in abandonment fear, which is called emotional reasoning. So for people who suffer from this insecurity attached styles, we often get convinced about something bad is going to happen due to how we feel, which is not reality, but because how we feel. For example, if I'm getting triggered of this abandonment anxiety because someone not responding to my texts, right? Because I'm feeling this anxiety. So I started to believe that it is really true because I'm feeling anxious. So I really believed my thought that bad things are going to happen, like this abandonment is going to happen. So we believe how we feel instead of the logic reality. I've dedicated a video to talk about this because I think this was a huge realization for my healing when I realized that I shouldn't really entirely trust my feelings, because a lot of them are distorted, a lot of them are based on past hurt, past trauma. It was not based on the reality right now. And the key to break the cycle, the key to get yourself unstuck from this process was something called, it's a method, it's called doing the opposite. Meaning that whenever you have this compulsive urge to do something, you do the opposite. For example, in that situation, I wanted to text him, I wanted to call him to tell him that, well, we don't have to meet here. If you're not happy, we can do whatever you want, wherever you want to meet, just you don't leave me, right? Just so you don't blow me off. We can do whatever you want. And that was my instinct, to grab onto him, to just hold on to him so that I don't get abandoned. And what I should do on this situation to do the opposite was to not follow my instinct, was to maybe wait, to soothe myself, to let myself calmly recover from this trigger, from this highly emotional state. When I become more rational, when I become more grounded in reality, I can maybe respond. I can maybe wait for him to respond. I can give it space to evolve into the full reality, right? Instead of acting on whatever was on my mind. Another thing I think really worked for me was to familiarize myself with my triggers of abandonment anxiety. For example, there are specific type of people who might trigger me, who resemble the characteristics of my dad, who resembles the words, the tones, the facial expressions, who, like my dad when he abused me. Maybe the look from the authority figure with contempt and with disgust, that can be a really trigger for me at that time, because it reminded me of my uncle who has this explosive kind of temperament, right? whenever I had that look from him, I would feel like I'm going to be punished, I'm going to be yelled at by him, and I would be full of shame, and I would be full of anxiety of being not wanted by them. Someone who has read my message but has not responded to me yet, that was another big one. But now, since I have rewired my perception towards it, it really prevents me from taking this maladaptive reactions towards it, because in reality, nothing could be happening, you know? So since I have this increasing ability to put myself, to really make sense of things from the reality, I become less reactive, I become less triggered. Even when I get triggered, I can keep it in a rational realm where I can recover quickly and fully. So those are the things that really helped me during my healing. I wouldn't say that was fast. There's no quick fix to it, since the traumas can happen at such a young age, and we have been using the same coping mechanism, which are not helpful, for many years, with compounded experience, with compounded negative perceptions onto it. And I would call this healing journey as more like, so sometimes I take 3 steps forward and I take 5 steps backwards, and sometimes I take 10 steps forward, right? So it's like going back and forth. Sometimes I get triggered even more intensified than other times. So it's like you cannot count on this streamlined healing. You cannot count on this, you know, you're forever going forward. It just doesn't happen like that. And I wanted to have a realistic expectation of your healing. But overall, I wanted to say that you have to really believe that these things do get healed. There's hope for change. There's hope for living without fear. Alright everyone, I hope this video is helpful. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up. If you wanted to see more videos like this, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.